Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Tom, for that kind introduction. I tell you, the older you get, the longer the introduction gets. And it's really wonderful to hear all those words of encouragement and this long list of achievements. But then I think to myself, if these people knew how often I trip when I'm going up the stairs, it gets really humbling really fast. But thank you so much for that introduction. And that aside, it's truly a privilege to be with here this month for our our monthly luncheon forum. I also want to thank the Niagara Foundation for giving me the opportunity to speak to their distinguished members and, of course, assembled guests this afternoon. And I also want to thank my husband and partner who is here today, because he is the ultimate social entrepreneur and a true visionary who could probably write the definitive book on the subject. So, but I also have to acknowledge one other very important person, and that is Dean Terry Friel, who is the Dean of the Heller School of Business. I happen to be an alumna of Roosevelt University, and so I'm very happy to see you here today. And before I continue, I really want to extend my heartfelt condolences over the devastating losses from the recent earthquake in Turkey, and does not surprise me in the least that the Niagara Foundation would immediately put a fundraising effort in place to assist those affected by the tragedy. And so I pray for an end to their suffering and a speedy recovery from that disaster. But as I thought about your efforts to help the victims in Turkey, I couldn't help but think about how fitting it is that I would be here today to talk about social entrepreneurship and the social enterprises they create, because you have demonstrated how relatively easy it is to care deeply about a problem and then act upon it, which I have to admit is why I found preparing my comments for today particularly interesting, because I get so inspired by people who seemingly do these simple things in service to others that then have this profound impact on the world and changing society. What a phenomenal concept, promoting global fellowship by hosting dialogues such as these and creating opportunities where people from all walks of life can come together and share ideas and break bread. So I'm sure I can speak for everyone here when I say that we appreciate your goal to deepen intercultural awareness and understanding, and we owe you sincere thanks for being bridge builders, not just in Chicago, but around the United States and the world. Because in the process of doing that, you've planted many seeds, seeds of kindness, seeds of knowledge, and those seeds have now bloomed into a wonderful garden. So you are truly an inspiration and a leading architect for social change, and a great example of my topic today. So I'm going to speak to you briefly, because after all, not only do I love my husband, but I have a love affair with food, and I know that lunch is waiting. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about social entrepreneurship, or what I like to call living well by doing good, and share a few examples of some life-changing moments that grew from very simple ideas. There's a story I like about a Zen teacher who was widely respected and revered. And one day, a fisherman saw him walking on the beach not long after a storm. And the storm had washed all these starfish up, thousands of starfish on the shore, and they were beginning to dry up. So it was pretty clear that soon they would all be dead. But there was this teacher just walking along the shore, picking up starfish and throwing them into the sea. So the fisherman caught up with the teacher, and he said, "Surely you cannot hope to throw all these starfish back into the sea. I mean, there are thousands of here, and thousands of them will die. I've seen it happen before, and your effort will make no difference." And the teacher said, "It will to this one." And he threw another starfish into the sea. What a simple but monumental act. And as you can see, a simple act by one person can make a huge difference. The world has always desperately needed innovative and resourceful people who not only see ways they can make a difference, but also have the courage and passion to act on it. Kind of like entrepreneurs, you know, those type A personalities who are driven and relentless. Oh, by the way, do we have any entrepreneurs in the room? Just checking. But you know, seriously, those type A folks, they're driven, they're relentless, they don't mind taking risks. And you know what? Thank goodness for that, because most of the world's innovations come from entrepreneurs. And in the United States, they drive our economy. In fact, about 65% of all the jobs that are created by entrepreneurs and small businesses. So I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years, and interestingly, my degree from Roosevelt was in social work. So I tell Terry all the time, I'm kind of like the original social entrepreneur without realizing it, because that was not my intent, but I had the opportunity to blend some wonderful training and experience and education in social work with my skills and my passion for entrepreneurship. And as was mentioned, I presently work with ABLE, the Alliance of Business Leaders and Entrepreneurs. So I work with some of the largest African American entrepreneurs in the country. 20% of our members make up the Cranes list of top minority companies that's put out annually. And our companies represent a variety of industries, everything from healthcare to technology to insurance and legal services, just to name a few. But importantly, in addition to being successful entrepreneurs, members of ABLE are also community and civic leaders. They sit on corporate and nonprofit boards, and many of them are considered leading philanthropists, not only in the community but in the city. They sponsor Little League teams, they sponsor awards, banquets. In fact, one of our members has established a homeless center for women and children on the west side of Chicago. But despite their significant good works, they would not be considered social entrepreneurs. There is one member who comes close, however. Many of you may know John Rogers, who is the chairman of Ariel Investments, chairman and chief investment officer. And John recognized that schools were doing a really inadequate, if a job at all, in terms of teaching financial literacy, decided to establish a school in the Hyde Park Kenwood community in Chicago called Ariel Academy. And in the school, they teach students economics, but they also teach them the stock market. And importantly, they give them the financial resources to invest in it, which makes them active participants in the outcome. And this is important as you think about social entrepreneurship, because that way they have some influence over the outcome, not only as a class project, but how they can make decisions about their own lives. So, what is the difference between an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur? Well, a social entrepreneur is an entrepreneur who works to increase social capital, often by funding or founding both humanitarian organizations. Old models of business meant you had to be good at selling and marketing to succeed. But in this new model, success can come from the act of giving, because giving changes everything. The concept of helping those in need is embodied in the American culture, and social entrepreneurs see problems as opportunities where others see failures. They see potential where others see hopelessness. And social entrepreneurs share a few other characteristics. They creatively apply business practices to solving societal problems like pollution or clean water or poor nutrition and poverty. They are socially aware and tired of the status quo or the world as it is. They continue to combine passion with kind-heartedness, with a desire for social change and a desire to be builders of a better world. But importantly, not only do they have that desire and passion, but they act on it. And finally, they measure success by the intended social impact and long-term sustainability of their programs. But be clear, social enterprises, these entities formed by social entrepreneurs, are not charities. I know I make it sound like they're a bunch of do-gooders, and they are. However, the social enterprises they form rely less on donations and more on creating self-sustaining programs. Some people say that whereas most companies do good after they're created, social enterprises are created to do good. Social entrepreneurs, for example, might start a soup kitchen, but right alongside it will be a program that teaches people to grow their own garden so that they can produce the food they eat. In some ways, it's kind of similar to that old adage I'm sure you all have heard about giving a man a fish versus teaching him to fish so he can eat for a lifetime. Well, social entrepreneurs take that one step further, because they're not going to be satisfied until they actually revolutionize the entire fishing industry. So, the concept of social entrepreneurship is centuries old. Early social entrepreneurs include people you've heard about, like Florence Nightingale, the founder of modern nursing, who fought to improve hospital conditions and established the first school for nurses, or Maria Montessori, who founded the Montessori approach for early childhood education. There was also Henry Durant, a Frenchman who, after witnessing the suffering of soldiers during the Austro-Sardinian War in 1859, lobbied for voluntary national relief organizations to help nurse wounded soldiers during the war. And his efforts led to the establishment of the International Red Cross. So as you can see, these individuals were pioneers in the movement, Yet I'm sure even with that, there was some caveman back in the day with little cavemen all around him as he was teaching them the basic skills of hunting and gathering and survival. In more recent years, when we hear about social entrepreneurs and social enterprises, it's becoming more and more part of our natural everyday conversation. In fact, before we started today, I talked to a couple of people who shared with me some of their ideas for social enterprises. So I expect after today you're going to run right out and get those going. But one of our former presidents, George W. Bush, brought it into the national consciousness in 2007 in his State of the Union address, where one of his honored guests was Julie Agner Clark. She's the founder of this video company you may have heard of called Baby Einstein. Well, she also produced child safety videos for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And so the president praised her by saying, Julie represents the great enterprising spirit of America. She is using her success to help others, and we are pleased to welcome this talented business entrepreneur and generous social entrepreneur. So that the President of the United States would actually honor a social entrepreneur in his State of the Union address really exemplifies the growing recognition that social entrepreneurship has received in recent years. Modern day social entrepreneurs might be the ultimate definition of living well by doing good. According to a recent article in Business Week, social entrepreneurs are now 30,000 strong and growing. And together, these individuals represent something like 40 billion with a B in revenue, which is definitely the living well part. And while we know that some people measure success based on how much wealth one accumulates, wouldn't it be nice if we also honored the impact of our actions and our giving? The Occupy Wall Street protesters are bringing this discussion into sharp focus as out-of-control corporate greed has motivated people all over the country to protest the practices that have allowed a 1% minority to control our country's assets. It might interest you to know that a recent UN study concluded that the richest 2% of the world's adults, mostly Americans, Europeans, and Japanese, own more than half of the global household wealth. Contrast that with the 4 billion people at the base of the pyramid whose annual per capita income is below $1,500, which is the minimum considered necessary to maintain a decent life. So it sounds to me that the balance of power and what we consider important needs to shift, not just in the United States, but in the world. But since I'm not here to espouse my political theories, now that I have, I'm going to get back to how great it would be if we could honor the individuals and the impact they're making on programs that promote social change. One of the more widely known and recognized individuals who received such an honor is Muhammad Yunus, the founder of the Grameen Bank and winner of the 2006 Nobel Peace Prize. In the mid-1970s, many of you may know, Bangladesh was full of poverty and famine, and there were money lenders who were really greedy and unfair to local villagers who wanted to start small businesses. So Muhammad looked around, and in one village he counted 42 people who needed just $27 to be free of the money lenders. And he gave them the money, and they were so overjoyed that he realized that their happiness at being free made him feel really, really happy. And he knew then he was really on to something. And among those people were a group of women who started a sewing business. They were able to generate enough income to pay back the loan, but more importantly, the loan allowed them to rise above poverty, and it changed their lives and the lives of their families forever. Think about it, $27 having that kind of impact where you could change someone's life and their family's lives forever. From this simple gesture, and $1,134, because I did do the math, microcredit was born. But not just microcredit, a whole new industry was born, microlending. When Mohammed started the Grameen Bank, it sustained itself by charging interest on its loans and then recycling the capital to help other women. Having thus proven microcredit to be a sustainable method of combating global poverty, he continues to inspire organizations worldwide to adopt the Grameen model to combat poverty in their own communities. Replicas of his program have spread to nearly every part of the globe, including Africa, Latin America, and even Harlem in New York. The resulting $9 billion micro-lending industry, boy, that grew fast, didn't it? Which has drawn names that include Citigroup, Deutsche Bank, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, hinges on the belief that people do not need the threat of seized assets to have an incentive to pay back loans. And since I didn't hear any loud moans, I'm assuming we don't have any bankers in the room. But there's more. Listen to this. They boast an audited repayment rate of 98%, which is far higher than the industry standard for loans to people who have collateral. So, maybe those of you searching for capital for a business opportunity can tell that to the loan officer. And good luck with that one, but if it works, please do let me know. Now, there's another story I want to share with you that of a social enterprise that's a little closer to home, and this one embodies the American spirit of service, ingenuity, and social entrepreneurship. I don't know if you've heard of an organization called Team Rubicon, but they're a nonprofit organization that pioneered a new paradigm in disaster response and redefined the ways that veterans can reintegrate into society. The president is Jake Woods, and he's a former Marine Corps person who served 4 years and was deployed twice, once to Iraq and once to Afghanistan. But after reflecting on his experiences in combat, he discovered that he and other veterans have developed the perfect skills for service in crisis situations outside of the war. So now, from tsunamis in the Pacific to the tornadoes in the South, Team Rubicon helps people rebuild their lives. It provides a role for over 1.8 million veterans to respond to natural disasters throughout the world, engaging a great untapped resource and offering meaning and purpose to our nation's returning veterans and heroes. In fact, Team Rubicon deployed people to Turkey soon after the earthquake, and according to their website, they assessed emergency response, they conducted medical assessments, they set up medical tents, and just basically provided assistance wherever they could. So as you can see, social enterprises often fill in the gaps where governments and others have failed and perhaps just need a little assistance. But imagine where our country and the world would be if we could organize 5 groups with 1 million people each, armed with knowledge and passion, who would then focus their time and talents on 5 global issues. That would be phenomenal. Perhaps there is some small recognition of that by our government, because in recent years, more funding has been allocated to help small businesses, particularly those who create jobs through innovation. In December 2010, the SBA, the Small Business Association, announced a new program, Community Advantage, that is designed to help nonprofit community groups make federally guaranteed business loans. Another potential funding source is the Startup America initiative, which is a public-private effort that is specifically designed to increase the number and scale of high-growth firms that promote economic growth, innovation, and jobs. The SBA is committing $2 billion in the form of SBA guaranteed bonds over a 5-year period as a match to private capital, and companies like Intel and IBM have already signed on. So as you can see, even big corporations are starting to get on the social enterprise bandwagon. So we've talked about how grown-ups like you and I can do things to change the world. But now I want to tell you a short story about how children are changing the world. And this is absolutely my favorite story because it's about a group of social entrepreneurs who are well on their way to forming successful social enterprises. Have you ever noticed how children seem to have this natural curiosity about things and a natural innocence about people and everything? And why shouldn't they? Because they don't have to worry about things like job security and mortgages and things like that. So they got all the time in the world to dream about things that adults think are impossible. But the fact is, even children with their somewhat basic skills and abilities can change the world. There's a little private school in Chicago just a few blocks from here. It's called Village Leadership Academy. And most of the students are children who come from a community in Chicago that you might call underserved. Basically, this means there aren't a lot of resources and options for most families, and therefore there's not a lot of hope. However, this school is truly one of the best kept secrets in America, because inside this school, where the curriculum is built around social justice and leadership, there are 3- and 4-year-old children reading exceptionally well. And there are kindergarten students, 5-year-olds, who after learning about the lack of clean drinking water in areas of Brazil decided to raise money to buy a well. So one day, these 5-year-old children bought their little easy bake ovens to school. You all know what those little, I'm sure most of us had them when we were coming up. Their easy bake ovens to school so they could host a bake sale. And over the course of a year, they raised $500 so that hundreds of children and their families could have clean drinking water in Brazil. Now, every time I think about this, I can't help but visualize those teeny tiny ovens just pumping out those little bitty cakes. I mean, can you think about how many cakes you'd have to bake in an easy bake oven to raise $500? But really, what a simple solution to such a big problem. But more than that, think about the impact of that on the world. A group of 25-year-old children in Chicago look at a worldwide problem, safe drinking water. And with the innocence that comes with believing that anything is possible, they figure out a way to purchase a well, and in the process they become sociologists, geologists, entrepreneurs, philanthropists, and leaders. And I say leaders because if a 5-year-old child can do something as simple as that, then I'm really not sure what the rest of us are waiting for. So, how do you become a social entrepreneur or start a social enterprise? I'm going to close by giving you these 5 easy steps, and then you too can change the world. Kind of sounds like I'm a pitch man for an infomercial at 3 in the morning, but it really is almost that simple. And at any rate, I'm going to give you a few, and there are a few additional steps, but I'm not going to overcomplicate it. So just think easy bake oven and then go for it. Okay. The first thing you want to do is find your passion. And this is advice that most of you have heard all of your lives. And it's interesting because I had a conversation with someone earlier today, and we talked about how we get socialized and we take these jobs because they're good jobs and they're going to give us good salaries. And it may not even be something we really like. In fact, if you want to kind of think about what your passion might be, ask yourself this question and don't even think about the answer, just answer it. If you could do anything in the world without fear of failure, what would that be? Don't even think. Because when I heard that question, I said interior design, and I had never thought about doing that in my life. But I realized that it kind of spoke to the creative side that's starting to come out now that I've done all the right things and the things that I was socialized to do. So the fact is, if you do something that you love, you can't help but be successful. Whether it's animal rights or eradicating poverty or even the arts. And let me tell you how simple it is. I'm going to do just a little quick digress for a moment, because there's a young lady who is the office manager in my office, and she loves acting. She's taking classes at Second City. She does improv. And because she has a day job, she really can't pursue that. And we were talking about that and her desire to get back to it. And so she said, you know, the other thing I really love is children. And I said, light bulb, why don't you teach children acting? You can take your love of drama, your love of children, marry that. You started a business. As we're saying this, there's a young lady sitting there who's the office secretary, and she said, that would be a great idea. I just paid for my 2 children to attend an after-school program where they're teaching Broadway acting. And if I had known that you were doing something like that, I would have given my money to you. I said, they're your first 2 clients. So without overcomplicating it, yeah, there are going to be some steps in between, but having an idea and just doing it is just that simple. We just have to get over the fear of what failure might be. And by the way, failure is good because you learn most of your lessons from your mistakes. But think about it from a social enterprise perspective. Not only has she created a job, she's become an entrepreneur, but she may be solving a problem in that she's taking children off the street. So we don't have to worry about what's happening to them after school and the violence and all the things that we read about, because now there's an alternative. And so she's created a social enterprise. In 10 minutes we did that. So the second issue is know your issue. You can't be half in and half out. So whether you decide to feed the poor in your neighborhood or you want to banish poverty in the whole world, you need to be 100% in it. And you need to know what to do, and you need to know how to do it, which means you actually may have to hire some people who are going to be smarter than you. So that means you have to take your ego out of it. And that's okay, because that leads me to the third step, and that is find the right talent. You know, in these harsh economic times, human capital has become much more important than financial capital, and this is especially true in the social enterprise arena. Not only do you have to find the right people with the right skills, but you have to also find people who share your passion. And then you have to inspire them so they're willing to dedicate their lives to making a difference and leaving a legacy. Because don't forget, you're going to be changing the world. So this is not something for the faint of heart. The fourth thing you have to do is build the brand. And think about how you can create awareness for your cause and promote it. A simple way, the internet is free, right? And so are social networking sites. So beyond that, you're going to need a website because you want a place for all those donations that you're going to be getting and all those volunteers that are going to be signing up. But let me just say this. Everyone in this room, if you don't have your own name as a domain name, please go home today and spend for the low, low price another infomercial, $9.95, and register your name. Right now, I tried to get my name and somebody else has it. I could not have foreseen that. But if I ever wanted to do anything under the name of DonnaGaines.com, that's not going to happen for me. And since I know that you all are destined for greatness and you're going to be the next big thing, just go ahead and grab your name. You may not ever do anything with it, but at least you own it and it's yours. So if you have a social network or a social cause, that's even more important that you're going to want to do that. So the final point that I'd like to make, however, is please think of your social enterprise as a business, because it is. And that includes nonprofits too. Some of the most successful charities in the world are just well-run organizations, just like businesses. They employ the same strategies, the same policies and best practices. And one of the things I should point out is that depending on your chosen direction, just like other businesses, you may have to seek out some patient or long-term investors, especially if you're looking at things like growing drugs for malaria. It might take a minute. And so I would be remiss if I didn't just talk about funding. I'm not including it as a step because, as you know, just like with business, access to capital and financing your business, that's a whole nother discussion that would take another hour for us to get into. And I'm not an economics major, so please don't ask me any questions about it. But I kind of deliberately let that off because I really think that that's something that is too complicated to really adequately address today. But sometimes raising seed capital for a charity is as simple as just creating a campaign where maybe you get 1,000 people to give you $1. And just like that, you have $1,000. Now, the entrepreneur in me says that if you can get 1,000 people to give you $1, maybe you can get 1,000 people to give you $10. So that means you got $10,000 just like that. And then, of course, if you ask for $100, well, you see where I'm going with that. But the fact is, you have not because you ask not. So make it easy. Just ask for $1 from 1,000 people, and you have seed money just like that to start your business. But at the end of the day, whether you decide to bake a cake or save a starfish, remember that we are here to be of service to others. And that's the doing good part of living well. And then the true spirit of social entrepreneurship, once you've got the doing good part down pat, don't stop there. But think about how you can turn good into great. Because unless you do something with your life, and this opportunity is as though you were never even here. I hope I have planted a few seeds for thought and hopefully action. I also hope you'll remember this final thought. To the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. Thank you so much. And one last thing, thank you, I have to do. I'm going to give everyone a chance today to do something special. And that is, as you know, the people in Turkey are recovering from an earthquake. And I think we have a wonderful opportunity to be social entrepreneurs today. This could be the start of something big. I'm not putting anyone on the spot. I'm giving you a donation, and I'm pleased to do that. But on your way out or whatever, if you would please see Sharif and maybe just give from your heart. I am sure that if it's $5 or $50, that it will be very much appreciated, and it is very much needed. Thank you all very much. We need these kind of programs so desperately. I think our world and the people in it, we're just spread so far apart, and we're fighting more than we're getting along. And I think this forum provides an opportunity for people of all walks of life to come together, learn about each other, learn how they can help one another. And I'm going to be a supporter of the Niagara Foundation for a long, long time.